Hello again, Guyana, and welcome to the Public Interest. I'm Malaika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us for this first edition of the Public Interest for the year 2016. And the last time we met, I did say Happy New Year to you, but there's no harm in saying it again. So happy 2016 to all of Guyana. On today's program, as always, is the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you, sir. And joining us are two journalists, one from the National Communications Network, NCN, Ms. Onicka Jones. Welcome, Onicka. And Ms. Abena Rockcliffe from the Kaieteur News. Welcome, Abena. All right. Your Excellency, it's unfortunate that we have to revisit what has basically become a sad topic for Guyana. We seem to not be able to get the scourge of suicide under control. Many believe that even if, with all the measures being put in place, whether it be by governments or by non-governmental organizations, that if people are determined to kill themselves, they're still going to do it anyway, despite the measures put in place. Is there anything extraordinary that your government would do for 2016 and beyond to address the scourge of suicide?
Actually, in a few hours' time, I am convening an emergency meeting. I think the number of suicides in Guyana, the variety of causes, the people who are involved, all demand emergency attention. And I have summoned a meeting of 6 ministers and maybe some other NGOs later this morning, Thursday, the 7th of January. So that we can chart a course. I do know that the Ministry of Health launched a suicide prevention strategy in September, 4 months ago. And I would like to get an update on how far the implementation of that strategy has gone, whether there needs to be any additional effort to expedite or speed up the implementation so that we can bring an end to this scourge. So there is more that can be done, and I intend to do everything possible because many of the persons who become victims of this scourge are young people, and these are the people who should be taking over the country.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. This is indeed a big topic, so I'd like to give the other journalists an opportunity now, beginning with you, Onicka.
Mr. President, you said that you'd like to do everything possible, but it is said that suicide is affected by socio-cultural factors, and there is no safe indication that what has worked somewhere will work elsewhere. How do you really intend to tackle this problem?
Well, to find out what can work here, we need to examine the circumstances, the conditions under which people live, causation, why do people commit suicide. Obviously, some countries have a higher rate than others, and I'm concerned as president that Guyana has a higher rate than other countries. It's not as though there is an average around the world, and we are just average. We are above average, and that is disturbing. So, in answer to your question, I would say that there are certain predisposing factors in Guyana, whether they're social or cultural or economic or geographical. There are certain factors in Guyana which maybe encourage or facilitate young persons particularly to commit suicide. And those factors are perhaps more prevalent in Guyana than other places. And I intend to find out why we have so many suicides. And once we identify those factors, try to use governmental action and try to get the efforts of civil society and households to bring an end to the scourge. We are above normal. And I want to find if it's social, if it's cultural, if it's economic, and bring an end. There are many cures. There are many cures, but we have to find what the disease is. Or I put it the other way, I know what the disease is, let's find out what the cures are.
Okay. Do you think that a reduction of access to methods and means of suicide is an effective intervention?
Not necessarily. If you prevent potential suicidal persons from gaining access to chemicals, for example, they use rope. They jump off a bridge, go to Kaieteur. So once a person or a couple intend to commit suicide, they will find the means if they have the motive. What we hope to do by governmental intervention is to maybe demotivate suicidal persons. So it is not a matter of depriving them of chemicals or depriving them of particular means. They will search for means if they want to kill themselves. And in other countries, people jump off of bridges. Here we jump off of Kaieteur. But quite recently, as you know, on the 6th of January, people use rope. You prevent people from buying rope. So we have to find out what are the causes of this scourge. And after that, I don't disagree with you. We can look at ways of removing some of the methods that they have used. But let's see what the causes are first.
All right. Abena, you're free to pose questions on suicide.
I have nothing on suicide.
All right.
Covered.
Your Excellency, if I can jump back in here, in the past, people would have determined that we're living in a stressful environment. We have been living in a stressful environment in Guyana for years, especially since, for example, the things like the cost of living is high. People are angry, people are uneasy and on edge. I know you're not a psychologist, but do you believe the situation, our lifestyle in some way would have contributed to the rise in suicide?
Not necessarily. Some of the persons who seem to commit suicide are not necessarily poor or live in depressed societies. I've been to some of those communities which are supposed to be notorious nests of suicidals, and the standard of living seems quite high. You know, people live in concrete houses. Many of the families have cars. There are no traces of extreme deprivation or poverty or depression. So there might be other factors. Now, you mentioned one of them. My own view is that one of the predisposing factors might have been the troubles during the first decade of this century, the first decade of this millennium, when life had been cheapened. And that could have been very stressful, even though people might not have been directly involved in the killings, or their relatives might not have been the victims, but there might have been pervasive stress, pervasive depression. This was the most intense period of killings in Guyana's history between, say, 2000 and 2010. And that might have been a factor. But, you know, it's difficult to say how people might have been traumatized by that level of killing, but it's impossible to avoid the conclusion that it would have had an impact on some communities.
Finally, before we move on from this topic, sir, the last suicide case we saw, it was, according to the media reports, a 20-year-old who would have had a relationship with a 14-year-old. Are you concerned about that sort of lifestyle in our society, whereby we have grown men, what may seem to be grown men, getting involved with our younger women, young girls?
I would like to see the statistics. I don't know if that itself is a major cause of suicide. As you said before, there are several factors: poverty, stress, depression, you know, maternal pressure, parental disapproval. You know, sometimes there are suicide pacts. Yes, the event that you were referring to might have been the result of a suicide pact. We need to do more work, and I intend to, you know, to get our ministers together and take that suicide prevention strategy further, bring in NGOs, bring in international organizations like PAHO, World Health Organization. Let us look at best practices and try to reduce suicide. Let us find out what the causes are and apply reduction strategies. You know, under the law, that constituted rape. I mean, the person who impregnated the 14-year-old girl really could have been prosecuted under the law. It's a crime. So that is a factor that should not be ignored. So I'm not saying that it should be condoned simply because they declared love for one another. So again, the alert, I'm not criticizing or condemning the mother. If she knew that there was an inappropriate relation, a sexual relation with a 14-year-old girl, I mean, the mother had a right to intervene, because if it was a sexual relationship, it means that a crime was being committed. And whatever intervention she took, although it was quite robust, would have been, I suppose, aimed at preventing a greater crime.
All right, thank you,
That-
sir. Yes.
Sorry.
I think Abena's...
Yes, you found one.
Yeah.
Go, Abena.
Yes.
Yeah, you wore one.
Mr. President, are you concerned that it's somewhat becoming a fad? And if so, would you call for less publicity in this regard? I mean, first we had the Kaieteur Falls, and then we have someone going right back there. Are you concerned that people are following a pattern here? And would you call for less publicity as a result?
It is possible. The copycat effect, I think, like I was referring a little while ago to the Worthy effect. There was an article in the Kaieteur News called the Worthy effect as a factor in juvenile suicide. It does open a window to persons who face situations like the chap who committed suicide. It's a German story, a story of a German young man who was in love. And because he was disappointed in love, he took his own life. And it did have a copycat effect. That is why in psychology it is known as the Worthy effect. You're right. Once people feel that the way to get away from the misery, the way to escape from failed love affairs or domineering parents is to commit suicide, it is a contributory factor. It's a copycat factor. So I agree with you. Or to put it another way, I don't disagree with you.
So would you call for less publicity on it?
No, it is not a factor. It is not something that should be swept under the carpet. We need to know about it, and we need to deal with it. If we don't publicize it, we would obscure the crime, and we wouldn't be able to deal with it. I agree with you that if you publicize, it's a dilemma for the journalists. It's a dilemma for the media. If you publicize it, somebody will copy. If you don't publicize it, then you don't cure it. It's like a disease.
Okay.
You have to, tell the doctor what you're suffering from.
Mr. President, in this recent case, there are reports that the couple visited a probation officer the day before the incident happened. How do you view that? Do you think that the probation officer should have done something more to prevent this incident?
I'm not going to blame the probation officer because, as we pointed out a few minutes ago, a dedicated suicidal person will find a way. What could have been done is perhaps the type of intervention which could have resolved the underlying problem. I would tend to agree with you that because of the character and the antecedent factors which have been reported, there should have been some more robust intervention. This is just the tragic climax to a sad story. So, again, to use the language I used to Abena just now, I don't disagree with you. It might have been a contributory factor that we did not have robust enough intervention on the part of the probation officer.
All right, ladies and Mr. President, we must move on to our next segment.
Mr. President, national unity is a term often tossed around. What deliberate steps will the government be undertaking in 2016 to further national unity?
The main step is, of course, the celebration of our 50th anniversary of independence. It is the single most unifying event for 2016 in my book, largely because we were born in this unity 50 years ago. And I feel that the lack of unity has obstructed the development of our country. When I speak of unity, I speak of unity at various levels, certainly at the ethnic level, that we would like to see the ethnic groups come closer together, and that's one of the reasons why I went into a partnership in 2011 and into a coalition in 2015. I believe political collaboration could be a contributory factor to national unity. So people start dealing with issues rather than ethnicity. At the geographical level, I see that the nation must be united. We must have an even standard of education, of public services, of health between the hinterland and coastland. Right now, there's too much inequality. There's huge gaps. Then, of course, there's education inequality. It is quite evident from the newspaper reports that children who go to private schools where they pay fees seem to, in general terms, have better results than children who go to public schools. So there is some element of inequality, and I believe that educational inequality creates disunity, because the better educated, will probably get better jobs and be richer and more comfortable, and the poorly educated might get menial jobs. They might even drop out of school. So I would say that the interventions the administration has been taking to promote national unity through better education or easier access to education, through removing the inequalities between coastland and hinterland, between the access that hinterland dwellers have to the public services, education, health, and the coastland dwellers. I think these are all measures that can bring about a greater degree of national unity. I think also that at an abstract level there needs to be more respect. And I would like to feel that once people come into contact with each other, there'll be greater respect. For example, we know very well that women are not fully represented in business and maybe in government and in some other important national activities and events. And if we respected women more, we'll realize that women should be allowed to hold higher positions in government offices, in the National Assembly, in the judiciary, in the magistracy, in every area of activity in the country. So there'll be greater unity if there's less disunity. It sounds a bit corny, but we feel that giving people equal access, women, men, hinterland, coastland, educated, non-educated, African, Indian, Amerindian, those are factors which will contribute to national unity. That's what we're doing, removing inequalities.
Abena?
Yes, just off of national unity, can we go to national security? We know that there's a problem facing Guyana with regards to Venezuela and most recently Suriname. But we haven't been hearing much. And for the setting up of the border, the Border Integrity Commission, between, I think it's supposed to be members of the government and the opposition. Can you tell me how that is coming along? And can you also say if you see a greater need to educate the masses more on the threat that is facing us? Many people don't seem to know the danger that is here.
Well, in the first instance, I do not think that at present the 11th Parliament has re-established the National Borders Committee. It has not yet been re-established. There is a standing Borders Committee in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but the National Assembly does not have a sort of integrated, opposition government committee. And I expect that will be done soon. I do know that the Minister of Foreign Affairs did have meetings at which members of the opposition attended last year to discuss our approach to Venezuela. I think in the second instance, in the second part of your question, more can be done. But let me say this, I have been at several major national events, including the culmination of the GDF exercise, Green Heart at Bartica, including the New Amsterdam Tongue Day. And the moment the band or the music plays Not a Blade of Grass, everybody in the stand knows that better than the national anthem. So, I mean, I'm just saying that as a symbol, people recognize that song, young and old. But more can be done to educate the entire population about the two territorial claims. One was settled in 1899 with Venezuela. Let me see where that has gone. Right now, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, is in charge of the process. We have written to him. I wrote him as late as All Year's Day. I've met him several times during 2015, and I'm very encouraged that he has a full grasp of the issues and that he has been asked by Guyana to identify a course that would lead to a solution to the problem. As far as Suriname is concerned, the maritime problem was resolved by international tribunal, and you've heard reports that the president of Suriname, President Bouterse, has renewed or made new statements about his claim to the New River Triangle. Well, we are sure that we're on the right side, and we will continue to inform, educate, and disseminate information to the population about those two claims. More can be done, more can always be done, and we need to get booklets into the schools, we need to get films, and we need to assure Guyanese that we are in full possession, full occupation of our territory. Last week, as you know, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs were at Kaieteur, and Kaieteur is almost the westernmost point in Guyana, near to the Venezuela border, to assure residents of that community that we are capable of protecting them from Venezuelan aggression. So we are doing quite a lot on the borders to secure our borders, and I will always agree with you, more can be done as new generation, because this is a problem going on not only for 50 years, the time we've been independent, but for 115 years since the matter was adjudicated by international tribunal. More can always be done, but that is our task, to inform the Guyanese people about the two border claims.
I'm still on security. There is a call for persons to join the Guyana People's Militia. Is there a model to make the reintroduction more attractive?
Well, there's a historical model, because the militia was first established over 250 years ago by the Dutch. It declined in the 1990s when it was dissolved and converted into something called an infantry battalion reserve of the GDF. The Defense Act calls for a reserve force and a regular force. So it was quite strong up to the mid-1990s. I don't know why it was dissolved, but persons who are in private occupation, lawyers, professional people, have always been willing to join the militia. It is attractive. People don't, they don't get full salaries. They just paid for the parades or the training that they attend. They give them a small stipend. And throughout the world, they have reserve forces. And I don't think that Guyanese are opposed to that. And once it gets going again, as you know, during the 1970s, there was a slogan, every citizen soldier. We're not trying to militarize society, but it's a very useful organization. In a time of flood, for example, militia people could be turned out and mobilized, and they can help in flood relief. And of course, it is a cheap form of having a military force. So rather than increasing the strength of the regular force, you can keep the regular force small and increase the strength of the militia. So in an emergency, they could be mobilized and made to perform military duties for which they've been trained. So it is attractive, and I'm very confident that the leadership of the Defense Force will be able to attract more recruits and more cadets to the ranks of the People's Militia.
Okay. I have another question, Mr. President. There has been a massive campaign to clean the country, mainly the city. And efforts by the City Council have not received the support from sections of society, some sections of society, especially vendors who recently protested their removal from the Merriman's Mall. And they have been trying to meet with you, Mr. President. What will you say to them? And are you satisfied with the approaches taken by the City Council as it relates to vending, parking, and keeping the city clean?
Well, the City Council has responsibility. It has bylaws and regulations. I have been advised that the town clerk actually had meetings with vendors. Warnings were given several months ago. They were given some form of ease over the Christmas period, but they have all been informed that the sites that they have been squatting on were illegally occupied and they should be removed. All I can advise is that they should conform to municipal bylaws and regulations. And that's what I tell the vendors. What I tell the city, the municipality, is that they should provide suitable areas that vendors could utilize. There is a large vending population in Georgetown, and we must accept that. Some people prefer to buy from vendors, but vendors must conform to the laws. They must not leave debris and rubbish, and they must not go in areas that are prohibited. The city council must provide areas for them, and they must abide by the municipal regulations. Right now, I don't know if there's been any element of lawlessness in the behavior, but as far as I could see, it's a two-sided story, and the vendors were advised by the city council that they would have to remove from their positions.
All right. The final question for today's program will come from Abena.
Thank you. Mr. President, we know that there are a lot of investigations going on, a lot of audits. And this year, when you're looking to foster unity and move away from this feeling that there is now, do you intend to pass instructions to accelerate these investigations so as for us to move away from this phase as soon as possible and get down to the important issues like national unity and development faster? And there was word that that there's some amount of division in your cabinet. Some persons want more punitive measures on certain past governmental figures, and some are okay and saying just let's move on. Can you confirm this?
Well, within the cabinet, all decisions coming out of the cabinet are taken in a consensual manner, and cabinet members are obliged to comply with whatever decisions have been taken. That is part of the ministerial responsibility. It's not a National Assembly. We don't vote in the cabinet. And once a matter is discussed, there's one position coming out of cabinet. So there's no division. People are free to express their opinion, but there's no division. Once a decision is taken, it's one decision. As far as the tempo is concerned, I don't interfere with the course of justice. If people commit offenses, it is up to the police or the DPP or the other authorities to take action against the person who commits that offense. If somebody from a previous administration murders somebody, I'm not going to say, let's get on with it, we have more important things. The law must take its course. So I don't interfere with the course of justice, and I never will. So if people have committed offenses, well, it is up to the persons who have been offended to initiate action against them. If it's a matter of theft, if it's a matter of murder, or I can't interfere in that. So I'm not quite sure what you expect me to do. If offenses have been committed, people must be prepared to be punished if they are discovered, and if they're taken to court. I'm not waging a vendetta or some form of witch hunt, but I'm not going to stand in the way of justice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ladies, and thank you, Your Excellency, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. This has been another edition of The Public Interest. I am Onicka Ramsey, and of course joining us were two journalists, Onicka Jones from the National Communications Network NCN and Abena Rockcliffe from Kaieteur News. Join us again the next time. Goodbye.